14th of February, which means it's Valentine's Day. I'm Anthony Davis. This is The Anthony Davis Show. We're going to spend a couple of hours together just getting to know each other and looking at the news across the country. As you know, Backchannel's the only place where you can listen to, watch, and chat with hosts of live shows right here on your device. Today's topics: gun control advocates disappointed in Joe Biden's lack of action. For many, the lost ship of Antarctic explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton is the greatest of all undiscovered wrecks. We'll look at the latest exciting findings with that. Also continuing our celebration of Black History Month, it's Mary Macleod Bethune, a trailblazer for civil rights, education and racial harmony. She's our star of the day, and according to a recent poll, neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump has their party's full support for a 2024 run. So that's how it's looking. If you want to get in touch as we discuss these, have these conversations, and look at the morning papers, go to backchannel.tv and you can type your messages, come straight through to me. Or if you have an Echo show, you can wake it up, say the word "say," and then your message. That's how it goes. Let's jump straight into the papers, though. We've got, where should we start? Let's go to Florida first. We do love Florida. What a great state. We're going to start with the Florida Times Union. And here is one of those very stories about gun control. The lead with gun carry bill divides Florida GOP. Yes, the Republican-controlled legislature's hands-off approach to guns has earned Florida a gun-shine state moniker. And true to form, lawmakers have yet to consider any gun bills in their 2022 season. And it's halfway mark. Let me let you in with a secret. They're not going to. They're not going to. All they'll do is, open carry, and they'll just basically remove any gun restrictions whatsoever. That's basically what'll happen. It'll become a lawless state, and the timing will be perfect for the Civil War in 2024. They'll just back time all of the dates, so it's perfect timing for the Civil War. They'll say, "Do you remember the old Civil War?" And they'll be like, "Which one?" "Oh, the 2024 one." "Oh, yeah. I mean, that was a big one, wasn't it?" Yeah. It's going to become part of our history, the Great Civil War of 2024. It actually rhymes. And that's going to be helpful. In England, we remember 1066, the Battle of Hastings. We remember 1554, was it the Great Fire of London? They drill us on these things. When was the Fire of London? Was it 1554? I think it might have been, or thereabouts. Carla, producer, is checking. She's very good at that. I would say 1666. I was so close. 1554 and 1666. They're so similar. They roll off the tongue. Anyway, 2024, the Great Civil War. Anyway, that's opened a firefight within the GOP rank and file over Second Amendment rights, which has Democrats standing guard for any movement of a proposal that would allow Floridians to open carry a loaded firearm in public, no questions asked. At the same time, pro-regulation forces say they're frustrated by an inability to have hearings on proposals to close loopholes in current laws and impose new restrictions on who can buy or own a gun. At the center of this year's battle is Central Florida State Representative Anthony Sabatini. He also is a congressional candidate who made it his mission to have Florida join 22 other states where open or constitutional carry is legal. He says this is the single most important bill that we can do to secure the rights of our citizens here in the state of Florida from the corrupt Biden regime, he said. His bill has the backing of a coalition of gun rights groups, the Federation of Young Republicans, clubs that count 700 members statewide, and the Republican Executive Committee in 4 counties. There it is. 42 guns among weapons seized at Jacksonville Airport in 2021. 42 guns were confiscated last year at Transportation Security Administration checkpoints at Jacksonville International Airport. That was the 5th highest among the state's major airports last year, ranked behind Fort Lauderdale. Everybody brings their guns. I was very, very, very nearly killed by one at an airport. If you look up the Florida Fort Lauderdale airport shooting of January 2017, look that up. It was a Fort Lauderdale shooting. at Fort Lauderdale Airport, January 2017. And I'll tell you, yeah, you see it? Yeah. I was sitting, it happened because a former military guy decided to pack his weapon. And the baggage claim at Fort Lauderdale, you can just walk into, it's not, baggage claim is not separate from the exit to the airport. I arrived with my family to move to America through Fort Lauderdale. I was sitting at Fort Lauderdale the day before, exactly 24 hours before. So that happened. Let me tell you if I can remember the date. Was that the 6th? I moved on the 5th. On the 5th of January, I was sitting in that very same airport, and there was a problem with the connecting flight, and I left my family sitting in that area for nearly an hour while I went off to find out why the flight had been delayed to come to Los Angeles. And they sat exactly where this guy, the very next day, killed a bunch of people. And that was my first experience of moving to America. 24 hours before, I was sitting in exactly the same baggage hall where that shooting happened. And left my family there so I could go and find out why Virgin America had delayed the flight. It was mind-blowing to me. I moved on the 5th. That happened on the 6th. Welcome to America, I thought. Welcome to America. An increase in guns brought to Florida airports reflects a problem that the TSA has seen nationwide and is concurrent with growth in passenger numbers as pandemic concerns eased, said the spokesperson for the TSA. Yeah. Hi, Judy, by the way. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. It's your first time. Welcome. Stacey can't stay very long, but she's here as well. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Yeah, there we go. I mean, look, my feelings about guns are very clear, and it's not a partisan thing. I just don't like civilians to have weapons of any kind. I just don't think they should. I don't actually think the police should either. And where I'm from, they don't. But unfortunately, America is such a huge country. Land was effectively requisitioned courtesy of guns. Someone pointed their gun at someone saying, "Give me your land." The gun is very much a part of the culture, the origins of the nation. Tragically, the kind of weapons that we have now, these semi-automatic weapons, are not the same weapons that the founders wrote about when they said that you were entitled to a well-stocked militia. They were talking about you having one gun that fired one shot and a whole bunch of shots. That's basically what they were talking about, not an AR-15. Also on the front of the Florida Times-Union this morning, headline, Trump denies flushing papers, says he was given boxes of documents. Yes, Trump insisted on Thursday he was given documents from his one term as president and denied having flushed other papers down a White House toilet. In a statement, he acknowledged having taken possession of boxes of letters, records, newspapers, magazines, and various articles after collaborative and respectful discussions with National Archives and Records Administration. He said he intended to use at least some of them for display at his presidential library, a rare mention of what generally is a top priority for a former commander-in-chief. The papers were given easily and without conflict on a very friendly basis, which is different from the accounts being drawn up by the fake news media, Trump says. In fact, it was viewed as routine and no big deal. But Trump's control of the documents, as well as renewed reports that he destroyed others, has been the focus of a mushrooming political firestorm. I think this might be a red herring. I'll be honest with you. I think this might be a red herring. It's just my view. But I think this might be a whole fuss about nothing. You know, I take this stuff very seriously, but I'm not entirely sure that this is the thing that's going to be the thing that is the thing that brings him down. I just don't think it is. Jay, welcome to the show. Thank you. Great to see you again. Wonderful. It's so nice to know that you're hanging out with us here. Let's go to Orlando now and to the Sentinel and see what they have on the menu today. Truck protest ends at Key Crossing. US-Canada bridge remains closed. Deal reached in Ottawa. Yes, it said police moved in to clear and arrest the remaining protesters near the busiest US-Canadian border on Sunday, ending a demonstration against COVID-19 restrictions that has hurt the economy of both nations, even as they held back from a crackdown on a larger protest in the capital, Ottawa. I think it's open now. They've reopened the bridge now. DeSantis won't back taking funds from schools. He says he did not support a House proposal that would shift $200 million away from 12 school districts that imposed face mask mandates last year, a move Orange County school leaders called unfair, unprecedented, and possibly unconstitutional. The House included the proposal in a budget plan that it will take up during a floor session on Tuesday. The proposal would redirect the $200 million from the 12 Florida school districts that required students to wear masks and share it with the 55 that did not. Orange County Public Schools could lose $16 million if the measure was adopted. I mean, who does this? I mean, this might be the only time I agree with Governor Ron DeSantis. Literally, the only time. Yeah. Millions in aid still available for renters in Central Florida. $40 million of federal rental assistance is available across Central Florida in local programs to help thousands of households facing economic loss amid the pandemic. Throughout the nearly 2-year pandemic, more than 12,000 households in the region have received payment from their locally run programs. But even as the tourism engine has been restarted, many remain in need. So that's cool. A lawsuit filed against attorney accused of sex trafficking. This is a Melbourne criminal defense attorney is accused of using his law firm as a trafficking front. Now faces a federal lawsuit by 4 women who allege he raped and sexually trafficked them over the course of nearly 2 decades. Wow. People are crazy, aren't they? I watched on Netflix yesterday the Tinder Swindler. Have you heard about this? This is an Israeli guy who used Tinder to catfish women, pretended he was the son of a very wealthy diamond merchant, billionaire, faked all the photographs and everything, faked the whole profile, had all these videos that he'd taken, which he just basically sent to all these women at different times, and got them to hand over hundreds of thousands of dollars each. And he made millions. He made millions. And he's still out there. He's still out there. You should watch it. It's called The Tinder Swindler. This guy is a con man. And he basically makes women fall in love with him and pretends he's a wealthy billionaire, doesn't have any money. He lives in a shack in Israel. But he's very handsome. And he knows he's got good taste. Well, that's a matter of opinion. And he basically goes out there and he just gets these women, all of these women, loads of women have been catfished by him, and then he convinces them to part with hundreds of thousands of dollars each. He makes them go and take out loans and send him the money. And he has a whole story. I don't want to say too much because I think you should watch it. But he has a whole story to back up his need for this money, and it's very convincing. And he's a con man, he's a confidence trickster, and he has got it down pat. But he's also a very disturbed individual. And it's very interesting seeing the way he behaves with these people. Very interesting. Definitely worth watching. Highly recommend it. I have to say, in my opinion, some of the women that they showed, there was 3 women that they talked to in the show, a couple of them were very naive. And what it does suggest is that still, even after all these years of, trying to bring some kind of equality to heterosexual relationships, there are still women out there who are completely dazzled by this billionaire lifestyle and think that is something that they want to be a part of, rather than alarm bells, because there are other women who would be like, no, I don't think so. I don't want to be part of that. It's just very interesting to me. You know, I really feel like we still have a lot to learn as a race about, you know, what comes with those kinds of trappings, you know, and who are the types of people that enjoy those lifestyles. And actually a simpler life with less possessions. And I mean, the guy was like wearing Prada and Versace, he was driving Ferraris. I mean, do you really want to date someone like that? Is that really the kind of person that you think, if that's the lifestyle they choose? You could date me and come into my Prius anytime. We could do 45 miles an hour. We could do 45 miles an hour in my Prius. We could listen to a little Michael McDonald. You know, we could wear Goodwill clothes. Something borrowed, something blue. You know, like the first thing he said to these women was like, I'm sending a private jet for you. Come and join me in, you know, wherever. I mean, that's called kidnapping. Mind you, so's getting in my Prius and going for a coffee. Just meet me there. Anyway, it's very interesting. The Tinder Swindler. The crazy part of this story is, and I don't want to tell you how it ends, but he is basically still doing this. This guy is still free, and he is still doing this. And hopefully this documentary is going to, you know, prevent him from doing it. But isn't it insane that this guy is allowed to continue doing this? You know, these women are being conned at such a rate. And maybe, you know, we all have vulnerabilities, don't we? So at some point, he will always find another victim. Even if it's on TV, he will always have another victim. Somebody will always want to be part of that lifestyle. Let's stay in Florida now. The Tampa Bay Times. Super Bowl. Rams 23, Bengals 20. Rallying for a win. I did not watch the Super Bowl, but I did watch the halftime show. I mean, the Super Bowl was on, like, afterwards. I basically showed up to a party just at 5 p.m. just to watch the show. And I have to say I was a little underwhelmed with the show. You know, I thought that it was wonderful to see them all. Eminem and I'm a big Snoop Dogg fan, and Mary J. Blige was amazing. They were amazing. But I don't know what it was about it. Maybe that I just don't have the nostalgia. I'm actually slightly the wrong age. You know, I'm probably 10 years too old. Or maybe I'm just an old soul. Maybe I'm the right age and I'm just 10 years. I'm just an old soul. But anyway, my point is, it was great. I thought they were wonderful. I was thrilled to see Eminem take the knee. I thought that was a very healthy move. I actually would have liked them all to have taken the knee together at the end of the songs. You know, can you imagine if they all dropped down to their knee at the end? Mary J. and everybody. Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. R. Kelly. Just saying names. It was Dr. Dre that started it. He was the first guy, wasn't it? Dr. Dre was the first one. Then Snoop Dogg came on. And that's right, because Tupac died at the age of 25, didn't he? I think so. Yeah. So, interesting. I thought it was very good. Maybe it didn't connect with me enough, but I can understand how brilliant it was. Apparently, in surveys, the under 30s didn't get it at all. They're like, who are these dinosaurs? They're old people, you know? The combined age of the performers on stage was 1,217. It's actually about 236, but that's okay. It was great. I didn't watch the game. I don't really know much about the game, but I know that it's good that the LA team won. And I think that's a very big deal, you know? I think that's a wonderful thing. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Shall I read a little bit of this? Los Angeles Rams defensive end Aaron Donald exults after the game Sunday in Inglewood. The Rams scored with less than 2 minutes to spare to win their first Super Bowl since the 1999 season, making them the second consecutive host to take the Lombardi Trophy after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers became the first a year ago. Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp was named the Super Bowl's most valuable player. Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow was sacked, a Super Bowl record tying 7 times. He was sacked. Why would they sack him? I mean, in the middle of a game, are you crazy? You need all the players you can get. So was he on like now on paid administrative leave or something? Okay. Parental rights testing schools. This is a story. It says a Pasco woman says she's advocating for her child. The teachers say it's harassment. I mean, this is all kicking off, isn't it? It all started with a classroom survey on personal pronouns on the first day of school in August. Pasco County parent Rebecca Youngling got a message from her daughter that some of her teachers at Cypress Creek High School had asked students what name and pronouns they preferred. They also asked if it was okay to share that information with the teens' parents. Youngling contacted teachers and administrators to insist that that the questioning stop. She claimed it could lead to sexual abuse and invoked the Parents' Bill of Rights law, approved by the state legislature in 2021. She told the school administration she didn't want certain teachers meeting alone with her child because she didn't trust them. It became the first of many complaints she would level against the school during the semester. With each one, tensions escalated to the point that 3 teachers asked the courts to protect them from her. One left her job. The superintendent stepped in with an unprecedented intervention. For all involved, it was a real-time test of Florida's new law. It says district officials responded to the initial demand within days. They said the survey was not part of the curriculum, was not required, and it had ended. I mean, just get yourself a job. That's my argument here. Just go and get a job. Go busy yourself. Go busy yourself. You have too much time on your hands. Also, a little story here saying DeSantis video ad misleads on Fauci, says the governor's campaign claims leave out context and timelines while selectively editing remarks about the pandemic by the White House's chief health advisor. Yeah, this is what they do. They just fake it. Just fake it. Florida tax collectors and the motor vehicle department say the bill could hurt consumers. This is the car dealers who may get more time to give titles. Boom time for auto dealers with used car sales leading to record profits across the nation for hundreds of Florida customers. However, the boom has been a bust. After buying their car, they've had to wait months for the dealership to fork over the title. Without the title, they haven't been able to register or drive their new purchase. That's because dealers have been reselling used vehicles without first possessing the title. A long-time practice in an industry that emphasizes selling vehicles as quickly as possible. The solution some lawmakers came up with is to give dealers more time to transfer titles to owners, extending it from 30 days to 60 days. Wow. I mean, I actually looked up how much my current car, and its current condition is worth now, and it's worth $5,000 more than I paid for it. Isn't that crazy? It's worth $5,000 more than I paid for it. Who would buy a car now? I mean, it's like I really felt kind of lucky that I bought 2 cars actually literally just before this supply chain issue became a problem and before the prices shot up. And I think I paid rock bottom in a decent market. And now the market is through the roof. Cannot get cars. Well, you can if you want to. You end up paying as much for a second-hand car as you would for a new car. Let's have a quick check on your messages. Thank you for these. Debbie has joined us. Welcome, Debbie. Rose, Elisor as well. Stephen, Joan. Thank you, Joan. Wonderful. Bob has joined us as well. Emily, Jay. Great. Thank you for spending your morning with Backchannel. Appreciate you. 9:25 is the time here on the West Coast, 12:25 Eastern. The Bakersfield Caledonian leads with city considers creating court for the homeless. The City of Bakersfield Homelessness Act ad hoc committee is exploring the idea of adding a homeless court to the city's navigation center, adding the lifeline as has been done at other shelters. The deputy public defender Terrell Wakeman, who typically represents clients in homeless court, says on Friday the city is discussing the Homelessness Act during the Homelessness Ad Hoc Committee meetings are a start. Hopefully they're talking about it with an eye towards compassion. So they're considering establishing an additional homeless court. The councilman voiced his interest in a homeless court. I mean, I want to know what a homeless court is. I mean, why don't they start with that? What is a homeless court? Why not just start with that? Marley, welcome. What are we learning about today? Well, I'm learning what a homeless court is right now. I don't really know. I still don't know. But hopefully we're going to learn a little something about the, backlash to the activities of the weekend. Something's happened this weekend, some kind of big chicken wings style event. We'll certainly be looking at that together. But we're looking right now at, we're just in Bakersfield, California at the moment. We're just looking. The headline is City Considers Creating Court for the Homeless. And I'm still trying to work out what this is. Is it like a court hearing? Is it a I mean, is court another word for something in the US that I don't know about? I don't know. If you know, let me know. I need your help here. I'm literally I'm hanging by a thread. My competence is really hanging by a thread at this moment in time. The problem is sometimes these articles are very well written, these in these local newspapers. Many of them are. Some of them, they're so ensconced in their local news and they're doing follow-up stories that they don't really explain what the hell's going on for people that are just looking for the first time, like you and me. Excuse me. Cash for your trees is the headline. Listen to me. A pest control district offers to pay for removal. I'm going to do a big cough, so I'm going to mute myself. 1 second. I don't have the cough button attached at the moment because I did have a button for coughing, but I now have to press mute. I had to take it out the loop because I bought a new device, a little plug, that makes this thing louder. And it doesn't work with the cough box. I know you're all very disappointed about that, but sorry, something got stuck in my throat, so the water saved me. Anyway, I'm back again. It's just humanity. We're all the same, we're all human. We all choke. Teaching my children about choking at the moment. My son likes to fill his mouth with food, eats so much, puts it all in, and then I'm like, you can't swallow it, can you? And he's like, no. I'm like, little bit at a time. Little bit at a time. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? How, do we know in advance? Is that nurture or nature? That we know that we need to keep our airway clear? Do you think that's something that parents need to teach children? Or is that something that's just inherent? Think about it. As a parent, I think about this. Does my child know how to clear their own throat? Is that natural? Hello, Penny. Welcome. Marley says, I have my little sister and she's 2 and she does the exact same thing. What, filling the mouth? Yeah. I'm like, that food's not going there. That chicken is dead. It's not going to fly away. Don't worry. You can eat it over a longer period of time. Okay, let's move on the old newspaper front here. Rams win second Super Bowl with 23-20 win over Bengals. California scientists battle over pay disparity. This is one scientist working for the state of California drives for Lyft and Uber on nights, weekends, and holidays to support his family in Sonoma County. Another manages the Barclay building where he lives for extra cash. A third has been pushing for years to be reclassified as an engineer rather than a scientist, a change that could mean higher pay for the exact same work. Scientists for California are key to food safety, cleaning up hazardous waste and protecting wildlife, wetlands and water. Their work informs the state's efforts to combat climate change, drought and wildfires. It says 2 years ago, 2 members of Gavin Newsom's cabinet said scientists in their agencies were dramatically underpaid, earning less than their local and federal counterparts and state colleagues in similar roles who are classified as engineers. Now, the union representing staff scientists is back at the negotiating table after trying for nearly 2 years to update a contract that expired in July 2020. They're seeking to narrow or close the gap with other state workers like their colleagues in engineering. That's so interesting. If you're classified as an engineer, you make more than you do if you're classified as a scientist. I mean, think about that. It's insane, isn't it? The Los Angeles Times, you can probably guess what this has. It's a photograph of the SoFi Stadium and Sean McVay holding the Lombardi Trophy after the Rams beat the Cincinnati Bengals 23-20 to win the Super Bowl. Mission accomplished, it says, 6 years after return to LA, Rams on top of NFL. So I was working yesterday, mostly, but where I live, there's like a big dell. Yes? Oh, Marley has to go. Oh, Marley. You're going to school. Come back tomorrow and we'll get straight onto like the Alaska newspaper, like at the very beginning, like just for you, Marley. Okay, have a good day at school. Say hi to your mum for me. So where I live, there's this dell, and so anybody that's throwing a party, the sound echoes around this dell. And it was so noisy yesterday. It was amazing. Like, there was literally, as I was walking around and then driving around the area, all I could hear was cheers and screams, like the Super Bowl was echoing in the canyon. It made a wonderful sound, the sound of people having a really good time. Because, invariably most of the people that were there were cheering on for the local team, for the Los Angeles team. They say, for Rams fans, it's a revel with a cause. Confetti flew, cheers filled SoFi Stadium, and Sam Lee, a teacher from Pacoima, sporting a Los Angeles Rams face mask and hat with curling horns, let the world in on a little secret. He said, we finally brought it home. The 38-year-old fan said, between whoops of joy as he celebrated his team's 23-20 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals in Super Bowl. Oh my God, he said, this is a lifetime event. It's right up there with my marriage. Don't tell my wife. He didn't want to leave the packed stadium on Sunday night. Rams fans strutted around, draped in flags bearing their winning team's logo. They snapped selfies with the field in the background and their Rams jerseys proudly front and center. Bengals fans mourned, their heads in their hands. Wayne, did you watch the Super Bowl? Welcome to Backchannel, by the way. You're brand new from Florida. Nice to know that you're watching. And just wondered if you watched it and where you watched it. Maybe you joined a bunch of people. I mean, I joined a bunch of people, but only for the halftime show. And then we ate hot dogs afterwards. And then we had the game on in the background, but none of us watched the game. But we loved hearing the tunes. We cranked it up really loud. And the commercials, of course. That's such a huge part of the Super Bowl. These very expensive... the advertisers paid $6.5 million each to secure a place running their ads during the Super Bowl. $6.5 million just for the slot, in addition to the cost of making the ads. So, of course... who was it? Was it Chevy or GM? One of the big ones. They made an Austin Powers commercial with Mike Myers dressed back up as Dr. Evil. He's put on a bit of weight, so he looked exactly the same, but he just looked like a slightly puffed out version. But the others, the woman who plays Frau, looks exactly the same. You've got to remember, the Austin Powers movies were like over 20 years ago, and they all look great. These people, they look great. And then you've also got Larry David was in an ad, which was brilliant. A whole bunch of people were in, they go for celebrities. And I've only seen a few of the commercials, but they were really good. It's so good to have good ads, It's so good. But the Larry David one was my favorite. It was brilliant. It was for cryptocurrency, I think. And he's like, nah, don't bother. It'll never catch on. It was great. Biden agenda fails, blamed on duo, is the headline here on the LA Times. It says, for all the ire directed by liberal activists at two moderate senators, who in recent weeks scuttled President Biden's most ambitious plans, Democratic members of Congress increasingly cast their blame on another duo for the failures, raising questions about whether the party can resurrect the centerpiece of its agenda. Some frustrated Democrats say strategic blunders by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain were in large part to blame for Biden's failing to win passage of a massive social spending and climate plan. The men too frequently sought to appease progressives and their allied groups while antagonizing the moderates needed to pass the legislation known as Build Back Better. It says after the bill died in December, leaving Democrats reeling, Schumer and Klain doubled down on the same strategy, pivoting to a chaotic showdown over voting rights that further alienated the moderate lawmakers. They still need to revive at least part of the spending plan. I mean, I just can't see how they'll get this through. I think they'll end up breaking it up. They'll break up the bill. There'll be a series of smaller bills that they'll eventually be able to get through. But with an awful lot of compromise. I sometimes think that, it pays to be too ambitious in American politics, doesn't it? Because there's so many divided views. Long before the games, he competed on TV for a shot. This is a reality show helped launch bobsled career of ex-lacrosse player Josh Williamson. An Instagram ad changed his life. The Florida native didn't have the high expectations when he clicked on a post about a reality show searching for athletes. He was just a 20-year-old former Division I lacrosse player searching for a challenge. Next Olympic hopeful, was it? Oh, was it? Was it? 5 years after winning the first season of the televised scouting camp, Williamson made good on the NBC show's catchy name by making the U.S. bobsled team for the Beijing Olympics. He and fellow bobsledder Sylvia Hoffman, who was a contestant in the second season, are the show's first Olympic success stories, and both will make their Olympic debuts this week. Isn't that great? Everyone has a story, like how you get there. Like everybody has a story, and it's so interesting. How did the former president get elected? Oh yeah, he hosted The Apprentice. So that's the LA Times for you today. Hi to Rebecca, welcome. Wayne, thank you for joining us. Nice to know you're a part of the show. Times Union reports notes officials' misconduct. It says for years, Nicholas Ferriero served as a top judge at Yonkers Raceway and officiated horse races that his family members participated in. He, as a state employee, played a key role in determining which horses could race, and he had knowledge of state investigations into drug use at the tracks. He also sent thousands of text messages to a few horse racing participants while he was officiating, behavior that a New York Inspector General identified as extremely suspect. Then, acting gaming inspector General Lisa Lee substantiated the conduct in a 2018 report. The findings, along with 14 other reports, detailing misconduct among employees of the Gaming Commission and 2 state horse racing funds, were never made public by the state, but were recently released to the Times Union. I mean, this is corruption is the word for this, isn't it? This is corruption. Misconduct among state officials who oversaw the races, also had family members in the races. A photograph of Super Sunday for the Rams. Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams celebrating following the Super Bowl. The SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, the Los Angeles Rams defeated the Cincinnati Bengals 23-20. It was just huge. It was huge. It's amazing. It's so exciting that it's here in Los Angeles. I've been looking at the SoFi Stadium for the last 5 years, watching this thing grow. And it is, from where I am, I'm probably 20 miles away from it. I can see it so clearly. It looks amazing. Obviously, I have to hike the hills to see it, up at the Hollywood sign or any of these vantage points you can have if you climb the hills in Hollywood. You look out across the city towards the coast, and there is the SoFi Stadium down by the Los Angeles International Airport. Jazz Fest music and magic returning, it says. The Jazz Festival returns to the Sarasota Performing Arts Center with 2 full days of programming. That's nice, isn't it? Who doesn't love a jazz festival? Doesn't a jazz festival seem like the antithesis of all of the kind of hellish politics that's going down at the moment? Do you know what I mean? Like, think about, like, that feeling that you get with, like, climate change, the world ending, the rise of fascism, the guns, the division, the all of this kind of hellish politics, and then put a jazz festival next to that. Say, which one would you rather be in? Where would you rather be? You know, where would you rather visit? Give me a jazz festival any day. You know? I was in Santa Monica the other day, and they had a little jazz band playing on Main Street. And these guys, their collective age was probably 1,000. You know, these were old jazz guys. And they made such a great sound. And they were so competent. They didn't even need to look at their instruments when they played them. They just played them. And every time they played those songs, I'm sure they sounded different. You know, such is the nature of the improvisation that is trad jazz. And it was just wonderful to see them do it. Loved it. Okay, let's move on. Should we go to the Press and Sun Bulletin now? Navigating special ed services in New York is the headline. New tools aim to help parents find the right programs. That's interesting, a photograph of a mum reading to her son who has special needs. Also, some still vulnerable as COVID-19 precautions decrease. Yes, it's interesting how COVID is kind of not... I haven't mentioned a single COVID story yet. You know? There's all this worldwide pandemic, and yet nothing has really cut through COVID-wise, because fundamentally we understand the concept now of what Omicron is and how it seems to be helping. But the experts who study the data, they're like, it's not as good as you might think. Maybe we've just got used to it. Maybe that's what it is. 2 years into the pandemic, Jackie Hansen still left home only for doctor visits. Her immune system, so wrecked by cancer and lupus that COVID-19 vaccinations couldn't take hold. Then Hansen got a reprieve. I've got hiccups. Scarce doses of the first drug that promises 6 months of protection for people with no other way to fend off the virus. This is a shot of life, she said, after getting injections at a University of Pittsburgh medical clinic. She can't wait to hug her grandkids without fear. The medicine is called Eversheld. I have not heard of Eversheld. Wonder what that is. I'm going to look it up. You know me, I do love therapeutics. Eversheld. Let's see what that is. It's an antibody. It's a combination of two long-acting monoclonal antibodies, and is the only antibody therapy authorized in the US for COVID-19. It's made by AstraZeneca. Interesting. Fascinating. If you are immunosuppressed or you have a medical condition, so people who may not mount an adequate minimum immune response to COVID-19 vaccination, as well as those individuals whom COVID-19 vaccination is not recommended, recipients should not be currently infected or have it if they're going to take these antibodies. This is very interesting. It's the only antibody therapy authorized in the US for pre-exposure prophylaxis. Yeah, I think didn't Texas like stockpile it or something? I think so. I'm suspicious. So Eversheld, I've been educated today. I think that's really interesting. I love reading stuff like this. Sorry, I was just reading it without even talking to you. I was just like, oh, this is interesting. Sometimes I forget that there's like 300,000 of you watching me read. All right, let's go to the New York Times now. They lead... What? Is there a vegan story? Oh, shoppers cut back on meat as prices rise 12.5%. A student from sunny Cortland has switched to purchasing meal ingredients other than meat. She says it's pretty expensive. At least it's increased by a couple of dollars. She's not alone in seeing the prices rise. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that prices for meats, poultry, fish, and eggs increased 12.5% last year. The meat is super high. It's too expensive to afford it. That's why she tends to replace meat with other ingredients. I mean, maybe this is a blessing. Maybe people are going to realize they don't need meat. You don't need it. You're just used to doing it. You don't need it. Your body doesn't need it. Vegetables are cheap. They are. They're just cheap. I mean, not in all places. If you go to Whole Foods here in Los Angeles, it's not cheap. But at least the quality is a little better, Rebecca and Wayne and Penny, Marley. Oh, Marley had to go. Debbie, Rose, Lil Saul, Stephen, Joan, Bob, Emily, Jay, Judy, Stacy, welcome. Thank you for spending your morning with us, or your afternoon, in fact. 9:47 here on the West Coast. It's Valentine's Day. We really should talk about love, shouldn't we? Love should be like a big theme of this show today. If you have some, well, lucky you. You've got some of that love that is so elusive in so many people's lives. Okay, let's move on. Are we going to the New York Times now? Yes, we are. It says, it's got a photograph also, a final stop on the path to victory. Los Angeles Rams won Super Bowl, edging the Cincinnati Bengals 23-20 after a defensive play by Aaron Donald. So yeah, he's very much there. And a photograph of the win, obviously. For McConnell, a stealth fight for GOP grip, it says. For more than a year, former President Donald Trump has berated Governor Doug Ducey of Arizona, savaging him for refusing to overturn the state's presidential results and vowing to oppose him should he run for Senate this year. It says in early December, though, Mr. Ducey received a far friendlier message from another former Republican president. At a golf tournament luncheon, George W. Bush encouraged him to run against Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat, suggesting the Republican Party needs more figures like Mr. Ducey to step forward. It's something you have to feel a certain sense of humility about, the governor said this month of Mr. Bush's appeal. You listen respectfully, and that's what I did. Said Mr. Bush had a band of anti-Trump Republicans led by Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, and they're hoping he does more than just listen. Interesting. Drafting allies to foil Trump's Senate picks. I'm amazed that Mitch McConnell is still going. This is the turtle, the human turtle. He looks like he's barely functioning, doesn't he? I mean, his skin is quite jaundiced, and he seems to be like, you can't tell how old he is. He could be like 150. It's kind of weird. But he's got a lot of work on his hands right now. The guy who's leading his party unofficially, isn't it crazy that Trump is the unofficial leader of the Republicans? You're not crowned leader after you lose the presidency. You're not crowned leader of the party. It's just, I guess he seems to be leading the party right now. There's no ceremony or competition to say, yeah, Trump is our leader. It's voluntary. The whole thing's voluntary. It's hilarious, isn't it? And McConnell, obviously, is the leader of the Republicans in the Senate. He is crowned leader, obviously. That's his role, in addition to being the senator for Kentucky. But at the same time, he's battling against this unofficial leader who's far more popular than he is. So it's a lot to handle. Border bridge will open soon, Canada asserts. Canadian law enforcement officials said on Sunday they were preparing to reopen a major international bridge that had been blockaded by protesters for almost a week, raising hopes for industries, especially auto manufacturing, slowed to a near standstill by the unrest. But at the footstep of Parliament, some 500 miles to the northeast, they appeared powerless to quell the near chaos. As officials announced, the Ambassador Bridge, which ties Windsor, Ontario to Detroit, had been reclaimed after a series of arrests in the morning. Some hailed it as a victory for a government deeply shaken by the intransigence. It was hyphenated. It was on two lines. Completely foxmissed in tiny print. Give me a break. the intransigence of anti-vaccine mandate protests that began 3 weeks ago and have since mushroomed. But it was a rare victory, and as of nightfall on Sunday, not a fully realised one. By the day's end, the bridge was still not open to traffic, and in Canada's capital, hundreds of truckers were entering their third week of occupation. The area around Parliament Hill, they appeared to be emboldened by a growing sense of impunity, though late on Sunday there were reports that an agreement had been broached for the drivers to pull out of some of the neighbourhoods over the coming days. Well, I really hope that that is the case, because on 5 Minute News we reported that it had reopened. So I really hope it did. Interesting. Okay, so anything else on the New York Times? In the Arbery hate crimes trial, the evidence is likely to be ugly, it says. The killing of George Floyd catalyzed a period of national soul-searching about race and racism that touched nearly every aspect of American life. But in a number of high-profile trials since then, including the murder of Mr. Floyd and the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, prosecutors have carefully avoided putting racism itself at the center of the stage. That changes as soon as this week, as federal prosecutors tried to prove that the white men who killed Mr. Arbery, a 25-year-old black man, committed a federal hate crime when they chased and killed him because of Arbery's race and color. But they admitted it. They changed their plea. They initially said not guilty, then they changed it to guilty because they thought they would get a lesser sentence, and now they've changed it to not guilty again. So they've already admitted it. There's no trial to be had. They admitted it. It says in the upcoming trial, prosecutors are almost certain to feature ugly evidence culled from seized cell phones and other sources, seeking to prove that the three Georgia residents, Travis McMichael, his father Gregory McMichael, and their neighbor, continued on page 5. So there we go. I mean, those guys are just bad people. You can see it. The whole thing's on video. Especially they interviewed one of them afterwards, though literally 2 minutes after the guy dies, and he's like, the guy's on video, and he's like, well, if he'd have cooperated, then this wouldn't have happened. Trying to be like talking like some kind of law enforcement agent, when the guy was just a racist out with a gun, seeking to lynch somebody. Literally, they were hunting down someone to kill. When they found someone. And his death was tragic, the way he died on the video. It's just so awful. He dies while running. It's really hard to stomach to watch that. To see a man literally, take his final breaths whilst still running. If you don't know what that looks like, these guys caused it. Behind India's organic cotton boom, fraud and false labels, says Michael Kors retails its organic cotton and recycled polyester women's zip-up hoodies for $25, more than its conventional cotton hoodies. Urban Outfitters sells organic sweatpants that are priced at $46 more than an equivalent pair of conventional cotton sweatpants. And Tommy Hilfiger's men's organic slim fit t-shirt is $3 more than its conventional counterpart. It says this product contains independently certified organic cotton grown without chemical pesticides, chemical fertilizers, and genetically modified seeds, the product description reads. With the fashion industry trumpeting its sustainability commitments, those labels are both a means of value signaling and a lure to consumers willing to pay more to act better. There's only one problem. Much of the organic cotton that makes it to store shelves may not actually be organic at all. I knew it! This is why I don't buy organic vegetables. I'm telling you. They're the same. It says the largest single producer of the world's organic cotton supply is India, which accounts for half of the organic cotton sold globally, and where the organic cotton movement appears to be booming. According to Textile Exchange, a leading organic proponent, organic cotton production in India alone grew 48% in the last year despite the pandemic. However, much of this growth is fake, says Indians who source, process and grow organic cotton. At the heart of the problem is an opaque certification system rife with opportunities for fraud. Consumers are assured of organic source material by brands, which rely on official stamps of approval from external organizations. Those in turn rely on reports from opaque local inspection agencies that base their conclusions on a single, continue on page 5. Yeah. The whole thing is made up, you know? It's like if I buy coffee, I try and buy fair trade coffee, right? Because fair trade is like an agreement amongst countries to make sure that people who work in the coffee industry are paid a fair wage and they're not exploited. And the price of fair trade coffee is pretty much the same as non-fair trade, right? So you might as well buy it. But a t-shirt that's double the price or 3 times the price, in some cases, that is supposedly grown without pesticides, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. That's the New York Times. I hope that's of use to you. Okay. Let's move on. Oh yeah, we've got our news update to come. You're going to enjoy this. This news update is all about the Super Bowl. And to hear me talking about the Super Bowl for 2 minutes you might consider it to be very amusing. So if you know much about the Super Bowl, unlike me, listen to this and afterwards just let me know if I got it right or not, because I tried really hard. I did my best, you know? I'm trying to embrace the culture. Anyway, here it comes. It's Monday, February 14. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US news update. I'm Anthony Davis. In a venue built for champions, the Los Angeles Rams carried off the crown jewel, a Super Bowl trophy, yesterday. It took a precise 79-yard drive, capped by Cooper Kupp's 1-yard touchdown reception, with 1:25 remaining for a 23-20 victory on Sunday over the Cincinnati Bengals, to give the Rams their first NFL title since the 1999 season, and their first representing Los Angeles since 1951. Those guys did a great job, Coach Sean McVay said. They took over that game. They did so in their home, the $5 billion SoFi Stadium, making the Rams the second consecutive host to win the championship after Tampa Bay became the first a year ago. The winning series, during which game MVP Kupp's 4-yard touchdown reception from Matthew Stafford was negated by offsetting penalties, ended sooner after the NFL Offensive Player of the Year easily beating Eli Apple in the right corner of the end zone for the winning score. Kupp had 4 receptions for 39 yards and a 7-yard run on 4th and 1 from the Rams' 30 on the championship drive. Even with that brilliant decisive march to the Lombardi Trophy, it was the LA's fearsome fivesome that made the difference. Led by Aaron Donald and Von Miller, they sacked Joe Burrow a Super Bowl record-tying 7 times, shutting down Cincinnati's offense after the Bengals took the lead, and then added to it with a field goal during a 22-second spurt to the start of the second half. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. There it is, the Volley News Update. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Hopefully I didn't make too many mistakes. Naya, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining Backchannel again. Great to see you. We're just looking through the morning papers right now, seeing what's happening around this beautiful country. We're going to start now with Texas, and we're going to go to the Abilene Reporter News. They lead with Happy Valentine's Day. They got you covered in chocolate. See what they did there. It says Frierson Farms is the place to go when your Valentine's Day plan needs to be clutch. Get me chocolate strawberries. If that's not a direct quote, but it's close enough for some of the desperate calls made by those customers who've put Frierson Farms on speed dial. I always pick up my phone, says Nancy Frierson, who runs the Haskell business with her husband Gary. You know, we do have hours posted, but because we've such a small community, we've taken things over to the hospital or nursing home whenever they need us. That's very nice of them. They've basically taken an Oreo cookie and they've just covered it in some, like, white chocolate. I mean, I could have done that, I'll be honest. I could have done that. Oh, they're red velvet Oreo cookies. Okay. They're red velvet Oreo cookies. They've put some like white chocolate icing on one side, and then they've sprinkled a few like mini sugar hearts on it. I could have done that. I do love Valentine's Day. Like, I absolutely love Valentine's Day. Sadly, I will not be celebrating this year. Carla, you got any Valentine's action happening this year? Anything? You being taken out? What does that mean? What oh, girls? Is that... I'd never heard that before. Is that an English thing? Or where does that come from, Galentine's? So that's like if you haven't got a date, so that you don't stay home and feel sorry for yourself and cry a lot and watch The Hangover or you know, one of those kind of wedding-y films, you go out and have dinner. Where are you going for dinner? Oh, that's exciting. And you're going shortly, I guess, because it's like, you know, it's 6 o'clock there now. What are you going at, like 7 o'clock? Oh, well, that's lovely. I mean, that's such a nice thing to do. I've not had a solitary invite for tonight. I'm literally going to be like, I'm probably going to watch Bridesmaids. You know, I'll just, or I might watch Along Came Polly, because that's one of my favorite films, and that's like a rom-com about a guy who, on his honeymoon, his brand new wife ends up sleeping with a scuba instructor, and he finds them. Maybe I'll watch that. If you are having a nice romantic Valentine's tonight, knock yourself out. You go for it. You think of those of us who are not. It's fine. It's fine. Okay, so that's the Abilene Reporter News. Let's move on now to Corpus Christi Caller-Times. Houston scientists acclaimed for patent-free COVID vaccine. This is interesting. It says 2 years ago, when a pair of Houston scientists first began crafting a cheap, easy-to-make COVID-19 vaccine, they had a tough time finding support for it at home in the US, a country that rewards expensive, flashy new tech. They could have used help with their goal of combating the virus both locally and abroad, where it was morphing into more dangerous variants headed for US shores. But the team at Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development, they worked on their patent-free vaccine with donated money in relative obscurity, failing to garner much outside interest. Then one thing finally broke through and spoke to the people who had been overlooking their open science approach to the vaccine, known by its first producer as Corbivax. It came without strings or a secret formula, making it a true humanitarian pursuit that could finally reach the unvaccinated corners of the developing world. Corbivax to beat inequity, read a CNN news ticker beside a televised interview with one of the scientists last month. Now, just weeks after their vaccine won emergency use authorization in India, international news agencies are lining up for interviews. Curious investors are reaching out to the scientists on social media from around the world. US lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are pressuring President Joe Biden to step in and support the vaccine's distribution abroad. The vaccine is being praised by scientists, members of the public, and the media as the world's COVID vaccine, the vaccine game changer, and the way out of this global pandemic. There's even talk of a Nobel Peace Prize. They say you're providing sorely needed ethical and scientific leadership. Texas should be proud, said Ambassador Martin Kiminai, Kenya's permanent representation to the United Nations. All of this buzz before a single shot of Corbivax has gone into an arm outside of clinical trials. I think it's one of the reasons it's been a bit viral is the fact that everybody's been talking about equity, and nobody does much of anything. Yeah. Well, this is great. I'm really interested to know more about this vaccine, though. Like, does it protect from all variants? Because, of course, that's what we need, don't we? We need a vaccine that is able to adjust its efficacy based on the different variant that it meets. And I'm sure they're going to be able to do that. But it'd be very interesting to know what the deal is with this one. Wonderful. More Russian troops near Ukraine. It says Ukraine's president urged calm amid intensified warnings of a possible Russian invasion within days, saying he had yet to see convincing evidence of that, even as the US reported on Sunday that Moscow positioned more of its troops closer to Ukraine's borders, and some airlines cancelled flights to the capital of Kiev. President Joe Biden spoke for about 50 minutes on Sunday with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and renewed promises of what the West says will be tough economic sanctions against Moscow and a NATO buildup in the event of any further Russian aggression against Ukraine, the White House said. So yes, I mean, that's just, still bubbling along, isn't it? And finally, January 6 as legitimate political discourse gives O'Rourke an opening. Yes, this is a story out of Austin, Texas. It says, when Donald Trump walked out of the White House 13 months ago, he left Governor Greg Abbott as the elected Republican with the largest constituency in the nation. But Abbott, facing aggressive primary challenges from the right in March and a likely well-funded assault from Democrat Beto O'Rourke in November, is choosing to stay mum on his national party's official description of the violent events of January 6 as legitimate public discourse. That gives O'Rourke a cudgel that he has wielded with force at a recent campaign stop. He called Abbott to disavow any suggestion that criminally invading the Capitol, terrorizing people inside, killing a police officer, and having four police officers die afterwards, trying to criminally overturn a lawfully decided election is somehow legitimate political discourse. I want everyone here to remember, when he talks about police and law enforcement over the course of his campaign, he's calling the January 6th insurrection legitimate political discourse by, see page 5. Yeah. I think I get the point that he's making there, He's saying that anybody who calls it legitimate political discourse has effectively nullified their ability to lead because it means they're blind, or it means they're prejudiced, or it means that they're propagandists. Fundamentally, I guess that's what it means. Maya has joined us. Hello, Maya. First time on the show. Naya as well. Rebecca and Wayne, thank you for hanging out. Penny, nice to know you're still with us. Marley. Oh, Marley had to go. Debbie and Rose and Stephen, Elisor, thank you. Great. Okay, what's next? What is next? The News Virginian out of Virginia. They lead this morning with counting it up. This is UVA math professor enters into brew wars for the love of math. I mean, who doesn't love math? 3 things I couldn't do at school: English and maths. A mathematics professor who specializes in numbers theory might not be the first person you'd think of to star in a Beer Wars commercial, but once you talk to University of Virginia mathematics professor Ken Ono, it all adds up. He's starring in a new ad to explain that Miller 64, Miller's new light beer, has fewer calories than Budweiser's Bud Light. It's all timed for the Super Bowl, where Budweiser rules the beer advertising airwaves with exclusive ad contracts, meaning no competitors may run ads during the big game. Interesting. Counting it up is the headline. Mathematics professor starred in a commercial to solve the question once and for all. I mean, I struggle with this whole thing, I really do. It's just because... What do I struggle with? I think it's just normalizing alcohol, I guess. I'm not really into the advertisement of alcohol. That's just my personal view, I think there are some things like smoking and drinking that you don't need to advertise those things. If people want to find it, they'll find it. They don't need huge ads. People struggle with false negatives. This is a COVID story about Jackie Kramer. She thought she had COVID last month. Or who just jumped on there? Someone jumped on. Oh, Emma jumped on. Hi, Emma. Everyone in her family tested positive, and she had symptoms: congestion, a headache, and fatigue. Yet the Andersonville woman kept testing negative over and over again. She took several PCR tests and rapid at-home COVID-19 tests every day for a week. She said, "I don't understand why I tested negative for a week when I had all the symptoms. I'd stare at it like, how can this be?" She spent the week isolating from her husband. 21-year-old daughter and 18-year-old son to avoid catching COVID, just in case the tests were right. Finally, after a week of testing negative, an at-home test came back positive, confirming what she'd suspected but wasn't 100% sure of all along. She called the experience extremely frustrating. Like Kramer, many people during this surge have received negative results on at-home tests, only later to learn they actually had COVID-19. A fact that comes as the federal government pushes to get more free at-home tests into people's hands. Experts, however, say the at-home tests remain as accurate as they've ever been, even with the Omicron variant. Rather, experts attribute the false negatives to other possible factors. No test is 100% accurate, people may not be administering them correctly, or people are testing too early to detect their symptoms. Morrow is listening to Backchannel. Hello, Morrow. Welcome. Emma, Maya, nice to know you're part of the show here. If you want to get in touch, you can just put backchannel.tv into your browser and we can chat there on the chat facility. Troops staged outside Ukraine. It says Ukraine's president urged calm amid intensified warnings of a possible Russian invasion within days, saying he had yet to see convincing evidence that even as the US reported on Sunday that Moscow positioned more of its troops closer to Ukraine's borders, and some airlines cancelled flights to the capital of Kiev, President Biden spoke for about 50 minutes on Sunday with Volodymyr Zelensky, with renewed promises of what the West says it will do. And for some weird reason, there's a photograph of a 79-year-old woman holding a weapon during basic combat training for civilians organized by the Special Forces Unit of Ukraine's National Guard. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? So you know there's a chance your country might get invaded, so you teach a 79-year-old woman how to defend herself. I mean, that might be normal to you. To me, that's just like an explosion in my mind. There it is. So that's the News Virginian. Oh, Correct is with us. Hi, Correct. Welcome. Nice to see you. And the Seattle Times, I think we're going to go to next. This will be our last one before we get deep into our conversations. They lead with drugs on buses and everyday hazard, transit workers say. Operator cites hazardous work environment created by toxic fumes from narcotics, smoking, and related volatile behavior. Bus and train operators say so many people are smoking drugs on Seattle area transits that the fumes and volatile behavior create a hazardous work environment. I mean, you know, unfortunately, this is just the way it is now, isn't it? It's just the way it is. I mean, the problem is that this is very, like, full-on drugs. It's not just like marijuana. This is like people smoking, like, crack cocaine. But they're doing it because it's cold and these people want to keep warm. So they get on buses and they get on trains. And if you have an addiction, you can't, like, ride the bus for the entire day. You know, some people do this. They will literally ride the bus for the entire day. It used to happen in London. It would see it all the time. And if you're on the bus all day to keep warm and you're an addict, then you're gonna shoot up. They say stronger enforcement is needed, including more police and security guards with greater authority to remove people. Beside toxic smoke, union officials say crews who maintain transit stops have been punched, spat upon and threatened. Many incidents don't show up in an official report. Narcotic smoking aboard transit took hold last summer and now surpasses needles and marijuana in driver complaints. Since then, at least 6 operators asked to stop driving mid-shift, and 14 specifically mentioned feeling headaches, dizziness, or irritated breathing. Typically, users will flick a lighter beneath a piece of aluminium foil, which heats the fentanyl, the meth, the heroin, or mixture on top. Where the smoke is sucked through a straw, air circulation systems carry the haze forward. Aluminium. My dream is to teach. My dream is to teach every American how to say aluminium. I can't even say aluminum. Bridge at US-Canada border open again. Oh, good. You see, thank goodness. Oh, I'm thrilled. It's just I reported in my news program last night for today that the bridge had reopened. And I did take a little bit of a punt. My theory was that by the time the show was published, the bridge would be open, because in my little knowledge of the way the authorities work, they basically want to have the bridge open for a work day. So it was a weekend, and I'm like, well, tomorrow's Monday. They're going to want to have it open for Monday, because that's how people think. They're like, well, tomorrow's Monday. We've got to have it open, right? So I worked on the assumption that Monday was the day they'd have it reopened. So I was working anyway. Thank goodness I got it right. It was a punt, put it that way. Detroit International Bridge said in a statement, the Ambassador Bridge is now fully open to allow the free flow of commerce between Canada and US economies once again. The crossing normally carries 25% of all trade between the two countries, and the blockade on the Canadian side has disrupted business in both countries, with automakers forced to shut down several assembly plants. Also, few options as allies flee, but Ukraine leader calls for calm. Well, do you know, Volodymyr Zelensky's actually been rather exceptional throughout this entire thing, considering that the guy is a comedian who used to impersonate the former president as his act. That was his act. He was an impersonator. And on a show like SNL, Volodymyr Zelensky played the president, and then when it came to the elections, he ran as a joke, because he thought he could do a better job than the real president, because he looked just like him, and everyone voted for him. That's what happened. Did you know that, Carla? I'm sure you did. It's just hilarious to me that, that is how people get elected these days, that people are so tired of politicians that they will literally vote for a comedian who impersonates a politician. They're so sick of the corruption. They're so sick of the politics of politics. They will literally vote for anyone who is not a politician, even if they have no experience. That's what happened with Trump. That's what happened with Zelensky. And it's happening all around the world. People are just not quite up to it. And maybe it's better. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not better, because maybe you have a separate, a very different thought process. Maybe you're like the red team, your eyes are not tuned to politics. So when you look at it, your perspective is so naive that often you'll use more common sense than experience. Sometimes common sense is better when it comes to politics. Anyway. So I kind of like Zelensky. And the fact that he's calling for calm throughout, and he's like, look, just chill, this is going to be fine. It is kind of funny, though, that people like Joe Biden, who for 50 years has been, a politician, is having to talk to a former stand-up comedian about, bringing peace to a nation. Do you know what I mean? It's like, does Zelensky, have to prevent himself from doing jokes? From doing gags? Does he like to do his act? It says, for Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president and a former comedic actor who was elected 3 years ago on a message of optimism about Ukraine's relations with Russia, something that now seems a distant memory, room for maneuver narrowed over the weekend to a tiny selection of uncertain options. During a phone call with Biden, Zelensky issued an invitation for a visit so the American president could contribute to de-escalation with his presence in Kiev. Yeah, Biden's not going to Kiev. They're not going to fly the President of the United States into a potential war zone. Oh, here's something I thought was really interesting the other day. Carla, I don't know if you picked up on this. It was not really reported much. But Macron went for a meeting with Putin, right? This is Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. He refused the Russian COVID test when he got there. Now think about that for a second. Think about that. Would you take a COVID test, i.e. like a swab up the nose or something, from a country that poisons people all the time, right? I was thinking about this. Isn't that clever of them? They're like, nope, you're not letting them put a swab up your nose. That swab could have had polonium on it. They could have put it up each nostril. He would have been dead in 5 minutes. Right? It's fascinating, isn't it? So what they ended up doing was he took a PCR test before he left France. He took a rapid test, a Parisian rapid test. He came with his own equipment. And he tested himself before he went for the meeting. But because he refused to take the Russian COVID test, they ended up sitting at a very long table. A long white table. They were about 50 feet apart having these talks. And the reason for that is because Macron refused to take the COVID test. It's so interesting to me. It's fascinating. I mean, think about this from a film script perspective. You know, like how do the Russians keep poisoning all of these people? You know, they hide the poison in COVID tests, and they get them into the supply chain, and people end up poisoning themselves when they swab with what looks like a clean swab, and in fact, it's a poisonous swab, and people actually poison themselves. It's just a theory. It's not true. It's just a theory. You understand that. But my point is, there have been so many incidents now, going right back to, I mean, the first one I remember is Alexander Litvinienko. Do you remember him? Alexander Litvinienko got poisoned by polonium in a branch of Itsu in just behind Regent Street in London. He went into a sushi restaurant and he was poisoned. That was probably, how long ago was that? About 15 years ago? And he had the slowest, longest, most painful death. Yeah, Alexander Litvinienko. And his wife was devastated. His wife used to kind of come on the media and talk about it. And that was terrible. And then, of course, you had this father and daughter that were poisoned recently. They were out walking I think they were in Cornwall or the Cotswolds. It began with a C. And it was a father and daughter. And they sat on a park bench. Sorry? It was Gloucester. Salisbury. Yeah, maybe it was Salisbury. Yeah, the Salisbury poisonings. And they got poisoned. I think that might have been on a tissue or something. I mean, you know, they're very clever, these Russian operators. You know, they can disappear without trace. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting that Macron refused to get his COVID test by the Russians. And maybe you do too. Okay, where did we get to? I think, was that our final newspaper? The Seattle Times? Yes, I think it was. There we go. We're going to talk a little bit about gun control now. This is after survivors of a school shooting that left 17 people dead have said they are disappointed in President Joe Biden's lack of action on gun control. Monday marks 4 years since a teen gunman killed 14 students and 3 teachers at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Mr. Biden marked the date by highlighting action to reduce gun crime taken during his first year in office. But frustrated activists say it's too little. They ran one of the most comprehensive plans to reduce gun violence. The fact that they haven't done anything in their power is absolutely unacceptable. I mean, why do you think this is? You know, let's just talk about this for a second, because, you know, the school shootings continue, don't they? It's not like school shootings happened once. Like in England, we had one school shooting. And that school shooting kind of echoes through British history. Because we had one. What was the name of the British one? Was it in Scotland? I can't remember. We had one school shooting, and it continues to reverberate. Is it Dunblane? That's right, Dunblane in Scotland, right? And Dunblane happened, I think, in the was it the late 80s or the early 90s, or was it later than that? Yeah, 96. Yeah, 96. And so we, because we don't have access to guns in England, it's not really a thing. And so we refer to Dunblane as a moment in history. There are things in British history they kind of set a precedent for the future. And I refer to the King's Cross fire a lot when I talk about things like this. I think I might have mentioned the King's Cross fire before. It was a fire on an escalator at a train station, and the escalators were made of wood. And so from that day, they decided that they would make escalators out of steel and not wood, because a cigarette butt got caught in the escalator. And that was like a moment in history where they're like, okay, this could happen again. And slowly they replaced all of the wooden escalators with steel escalators. Although saying that, are the escalators at St. John's Wood not still made of wood? No? They feel like they might be. Anyway. I do like having these conversations. My memory of England has changed. I mean, I haven't been there for 5 years, but my memory of it is like it's stored now in like quite a deep file. You know, it's been moved out of my RAM into my ROM. It's like right back there. But I seem to remember that St. John's Wood and maybe Regent's Park are very kind of old school. Maybe they've been done now. Yeah, it would be illegal. I'm sure it would be illegal. I don't know why I think that. Maybe they just kept it looking ornate or something. Okay, so let's have a little look at this. Because, you know, the Parkland shooting, which for me here is the one where really that did kind of create a movement. You know, the Parkland kids who set up that big rally, do you remember? And they had that concert, and they've really, you know, they were so, these children were so smart. I shouldn't call them children because they're not, they're young adults, but they are very mindful, and they understand social media. And so the Parkland shooting kind of happened at a time where there was enough young people who'd lost their classmates in this. Once they'd had time to grieve, and in a couple of cases they hadn't yet finished grieving, there was that beautiful girl who got up and made that speech and cried right through the speech about her friends that she'd lost in the shooting. And I think that did create a movement. But this is something you have to understand about the NRA, you know, the gun rights brigade, the gun lobby, and this whole movement in America. And that is that they don't want to budge an inch. They have any emotional sympathy or emotional involvement with shootings. To them, they block it out because they are so fundamental about their desire to allow guns to be as normal as silverware, that any of the criticism of guns or gun control or gun rights or any of these things, to them in their minds, they just block it. They won't even engage in conversation. They block it. Because how can a human not have empathy or sympathize with children being executed in a school? And what they do, and so they block it out. And they blame mental health. They say, oh, the guy was mental. They don't even know what mental health means, because invariably they have mental health problems themselves. So they just say, the guy was mental, it was nothing to do with the gun, it could have been anybody, but this guy was mental. And that's their argument every time. That people have been using mental health as a kind of excuse to not do anything, because they make it seem like it's just one person, one bad actor, they say. And the reality is, we all have mental health problems. We just manage them differently. And who's to say that any of us couldn't have a bad day? So therefore the issue is access to firearms, access to guns. And invariably it's kids stealing their parents' guns. You know? So it's just obvious what you have to do. You just get rid of the guns. You have a massive gun amnesty. And then you smelt all the guns. And you build a huge memorial out of all of the smelted guns. You build a huge memorial to all of the children lost in school shootings, made out of the metal of these guns. And you say this is the last time these guns will ever be used. How is it that we live in a country? Joan is back. Tommy, Choice, Kim, correct. Maro, Emma, Maya, welcome. How is it that we live in a country where... Hi, Joan. Said hi to Joan. Joan has just returned with her video. Now you can see what's going on. I hope we didn't let you down. Hope we didn't disappoint you. How can you live in a country where a school shooting every week, almost, is not enough to change habits? Do you see what I mean? It's like we're living in a country where something as bad as that, it's like if I said to you, think of the worst thing that could ever happen in life. Like, what is the worst thing that could ever happen in life? Can you think of anything worse than school shootings? I actually can't. I cannot think of anything worse in terms of a scenario where, because often it's a kid who knows the rules because they're in the class, they've been drilled. They teach children how to behave during a school shooting. They have a drill. My daughter does it. They call it villain training. The villain drill. How do you... You're training the guy or the girl or who... Well, it's invariably boys, isn't it? You're training the boy who's going to end up shooting up the school in the school shooting drill. He knows the rules. He knows how to avoid. I can't think of anything worse. And so what I'm saying to you is, how is it that the thing that I can't think of anything worse than happening still be something that nobody on the right wants to do anything about? How is that possible? And is that a deciding factor in choosing who are the goodies and who are the baddies? Are the baddies the right and the goodies the left? Does it come down to that? Goodies and baddies? Because the people on the left, obviously, they want to have some kind of gun control. They're not saying they want to ban firearms. They want to have some kind of gun control to make these types of shootings less likely. And the right is saying no to everything. And I can't think of anything worse than a school shooting. I literally can't. I have children, so that's how I have so much empathy for this situation. I can't think of anything worse. There's lots of ways to die, but that is, to be with your kids and your friends, to be shot by someone in your class, it's got to be the worst thing in history. And yet people still are like, it's just one bad actor. It's like, do me a favor. Are your guns that important to you that you're not prepared to give them up for the sake of kids in school? What will it take? Is it a bribe if you were given like $100,000? Could do that? If you give up all your guns, we'll give you $100,000. Would you do that? Because I know money talks in America. It's all about the dollar. Give up your weapons for $100,000. Yeah. School massacre. The two words should never appear in the same sentence. Let's look at. We're going to move on because we could talk about this all day, but I appreciate that it's a little depressing. So I just want to kind of remind you there are other things out there, and it is Valentine's Day after all. Here's a story. A significant number of both Democrats and Republicans currently hope to see their parties find alternatives to Joe Biden and Trump in the next presidential election, according to a new CNN poll conducted by SSRS. But very few have specific candidates in mind, underscoring how distant and potentially mutable the 2024 race remains. It says the survey found that 45% of Democrats and Democrat-leaning voters wanted to see the party renominate Biden in 2024, while 51% preferred a different candidate. There's more support in the party for Biden among voters 45 and older who want to see him as the nominee again. I don't want to see Biden as the nominee again, I'll be honest. I would like to see two black women. I would like to see two black women be the president and the vice president. Think about that, right? So you keep Kamala Harris in her current role for stability, or you elevate her to the top job, and then you put another black woman in. It would be amazing. Think how angry the white supremacists would be that they weren't just black, but they were also female. Think how angry the old white male supremacist regime would be to know that the entire administration was made up of black females. Hey, why stop at the president and the vice president? What about the entire cabinet, just like black women? Will Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez be old enough to run for president? I think she will be, because she was just under the age, wasn't she? I would back her. You know, I would totally back her. I think she's like 34, and I think you had to be... Didn't you have to be 35? Or maybe you had to be older. There's an age limit on being president, which is ridiculous. You know? Yeah, there's an age limit. There's a lower age limit. I think you have to be 40. I think you have to be 35 or 40. Maybe 35. And I think the reason that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez couldn't run last time, not that she would have done because it was too soon for her, but she was actually, when people said, oh, she should be president, her answer was, I'm actually too young, there's a limit. I was under 35. We're just looking it up. But I would say that based upon her birthday, she will probably be old enough to run for president in 2024. Isn't it crazy that there's an age limit? I mean, I'm amazed that they don't say it has to be a white male as well. There's also a gap between the 48% of self-identified Democrats who want to see Biden renominated and the third of Democratic-leaning independents who felt the same. The 2024 support for Biden concentrated among his most ardent backers in the party, while 70% of Democratic voters who strongly approve of the way he's handling the job said they'd like to see him renominated. That drops to just 35% among Democrats who said they approve moderately. Interesting. It is interesting, isn't it? I mean, you know, do you feel like Biden has done enough? Do you think that he's the right man for the right job? I actually think that he was kind of the right age to fight the election and win the election and then just maybe be president for the first year. But I actually feel like now he's aged a lot. And I saw him in an interview with Lester Holt a couple of days ago. And I just thought, man, you've aged a lot. And I'm not saying he's not with it. I think he is with it. But I also think that the world has changed and there is more of a kind of youthful attitude now that is required when it comes to negotiating. It requires a certain reflex. You know how our reflexes are as we age? They change. And I just don't know if he's got the reflexes. Across the aisle, Republican and Republican-leaning voters say they are evenly split between wanting their party to nominate Trump again, 50%, or a different candidate. A majority of Republicans favored Trump compared with 38% of Republican-leaning independents. Continued support for the former president within the GOP was also particularly strong among white voters without a college degree, that's 60%, and those who falsely claim Biden's 2020 victory was illegitimate. Wow, 64%. 64% of Republicans. So that means that if 74 million people voted for Trump, 64%, let's find out, what is 64% of 74 million? I asked Siri. 47 million. That means 47 million people in America think that Biden is not the legitimate president. Just think about that for a moment. The SoFi Stadium holds 60,000 people, right? The SoFi Stadium holds 60,000 people. And 46 million people didn't think 47 million people thought that Biden is not the legitimate president. The next presidential primaries are, of course, almost 2 years away, and these polls are in no prediction of what nomination process will look like. What they do provide is a glimpse of the current state of the parties. Both are divided over whether to rally behind their current flag bearers, but neither has anointed an alternative yet. The numbers for both Biden and Trump look tepid compared to past poll results on a similar question. In 2010, 8 in 10 Democrats said they wanted the party to renominate Barack Obama. And in March 2018, Republican and Republican-leaning voters were solidly behind Trump's nomination, 77%. But now, the new poll also suggests the hesitance over Biden and Trump stems more from electability and other concerns that because their partisans don't want them to be president. It says of those Democratic-aligned voters hoping to see Biden replaced on the ticket, 31% said it was because they didn't want him to be re-elected. 35% said it was mostly because they doubted Biden's ability to win against a Republican candidate, and the rest offered up other reasons for wanting to switch up the ticket. The most common being concerns about Biden's age. He's going to be 82 in November 2024. 82. Yeah. But Trump will be like 78. Or maybe older. Maybe Trump will be 79. Democratic-aligned voters also aren't gravitating en masse towards any specific alternatives. Only 12% of all Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters wanted to see a nominee who isn't Biden and had a specific alternative in mind. No individual candidate was named by more than 5% who didn't want Biden atop the ticket. On the Republican side, only 39% of those hoping Trump isn't on the ticket said it specifically because they don't want to see him as president again. 22% said they doubted Trump could win against the Democrats, while 38% had other reasons, including wanting a fresher candidate or someone less polarizing due to concerns over Trump's personality. Just 19% of all Republican-aligned voters had a preferred alternative to Trump in mind. 29% picked just someone besides Trump. But among those looking for alternatives, one name stood out. Oh yes. Your friend and mine, Ron DeSantis. With no other potential candidates getting more than 1%, Ron got 21%. I would love him to try and be the president. Because the guy's an idiot. You know? Isn't it tragic? Of all of the great thinkers, the great artists, the great writers, authors, journalists, creatives, philosophers, all of these amazing minds that we have in America. And yet Ron DeSantis is like what people think would make a good president. Like, do you realize that this guy is like a Neanderthal man? You know, he literally, like, he doesn't have any words. He doesn't have any words. And he refused to condemn a Nazi protest last week. He's got a Stop Woke Act. He's got a Don't Say Gay bill. I mean, this guy is like a white supremacist, anti-diversity. And he probably doesn't even believe half of it. He's a populist. He just literally is doing the stuff that his Floridians are going to love. And then they realize that that's their meal ticket because it's like, oh, well, this seems to work. This is making me popular. I'll stick with this. And then they double down on it. The poll was conducted January 10 through February 6 among a random national sample of 1,527 adults initially reached by mail. It's the second survey that has been conducted using this methodology. Surveys were either conducted online or by telephone with a live interviewer. Results for the full sample have a margin of sampling error of plus or minus 3.3 percentage points. Interesting. We've only got 10 minutes left, so should we do... Yeah, the Florida local papers really are very good at this. You know, we read through lots of them, the Miami Herald and, various papers. But I really feel like there's some good local journalists doing some good work, So we were going to talk about Ernest Shackleton, the lost ship of Antarctic explorer, the greatest of all undiscovered wrecks, of course. In part, that's because of the extraordinary story that surrounds the 1915 sinking of the Endurance, an epic tale of 28 men who somehow survived and escaped the calamity of becoming stranded in the frozen wastes of the Weddell Sea. But the allure also has something to do with the daunting challenge the wreck now presents to anyone who might consider trying to find it. What remains of the Endurance is 3,000 meters down in waters that are pretty much permanently covered in thick sea ice, the same sea ice that trapped and then ruptured the hull of Shackleton's polar yacht. You need a good strategy, immense skill, and an enormous dollop of good luck just to get near the sinking location. A team of hopefuls is on its way to the Antarctic right now. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, these people, again, I was talking about the great Americans. The ship sank in 1915. It now lies somewhere at the bottom of the sea. The crew and Sir Ernest, they abandoned the ship after 10 months stuck in the ice before making the treacherous journey to safety with limited resources. All they had was an iPhone and an iPad. I'm kidding. But that would have been fun, wouldn't it? Sir, all we've got is this iPhone and this iPad. The expedition gained notoriety for the incredible escape and the fact that almost all of Sir Ernest's crew survived the expedition. Now, 1 month from the 100th anniversary of Sir Ernest's death, a South African registered research ship, the August 2, is setting sail for Antarctica in a bid to find the wreck of Endurance. The expedition is expected to be at sea for at least 35 days. It consists of a crew of marine archaeologists, polar scientists, technicians and historians, including the TV historian Dan Snow. I love Dan Snow. What a lovely guy. What's so interesting to me is that despite all of the anarchy that's happening on our planet right now, I was saying this earlier about jazz, like going to a nice jazz club, hearing some jazz musicians just jazz it up. The fact that people have enough interest and time and resources and experience and training to go to Antarctic to try and hunt for the Endurance and do studies on Antarctic environment and how it's being affected by global warming, and help bring the story of Sir Ernest's expedition and Antarctic exploration to new generations. We need these people to do these things. And any one of the people on that expedition would make a better president than Ron DeSantis. All of them. Any of them. DeSantis wouldn't have the strength to even put his feet into the snow boots required. The guy's grown up in Florida. He'll be like, what's happening here? When the Endurance sank, its coordinates were recorded by Captain Frank Walsley. So the measurements are going to provide a starting point and focus for the search operation. But due to overcast positions on November 21st, 1915, it's not known how accurate the recordings are. I'm going to predict something. It's going to be exactly where the coordinates say. It's going to be exactly where they think it is. There's all this fear of like, oh, maybe it's not, it was overcast. I guarantee that the last thing Captain Frank Walsley did before he got the hell out of there was make sure he got the coordinates right. I guarantee we'll hear an announcement in a few weeks' time. They'll be like, so that guy recorded in 1915, he was absolutely on it, to within inches. Autonomous underwater sea vehicles will be used to locate, survey and film the wreck, which could be up to 3,000 meters underwater without touching or disturbing it. The vehicles can travel 100 miles from their launch ship, meaning that even if pack ice prevents it from getting close to the location of the Endurance, it will still be possible to see it. Amazing. Anyway, that's the story of Ernest Shackleton and his lost ship Endurance. And finally, we're going to talk about Mary Macleod Bethune, who's a trailblazer for civil rights, because, as you know on this show, all this month, we are celebrating and commemorating Black History Month. So in the last 5 minutes of the show, I thought we would spend some time learning about another person that has kind of helped America along the way. Kaylin sorry. Sunny, welcome. Nice to chat to you. Julian, first time, welcome. Thank you for joining Backchannel. I'm Anthony. I'm only here for 5 more minutes, then your pal Hal will be here, so we'll look forward to him. But in the meantime, let's talk about Patsy and Samuel Mcleod, who knew the cruelty and harsh realities for black people in the Civil War era South. when the former slave's 15th child was born in 1870. 15th? 15th? Was born in 1875, they undoubtedly hoped their baby girl Mary would live a purely free life, have the chances they never did to get an education, and one day be a mother. They were going to unveil a statue, a sculpture in Washington, D.C. to commemorate Mary Macleod Bethune. But it got delayed for 4 months because of COVID. It's a masterly chiseled white marble sculpture. It was supposed to be unveiled on the 2nd of February in the U.S. Capitol Building's National Statuary Hall. But COVID protocols prevented them from doing it. Wow. Yeah, she created the United Nations Charter, that's right. She was born in 1875 in a small log cabin on a South Carolina rice and cotton farm and grabbed every chance she got to educate herself. Her original dream was to be a missionary in Africa, but she was denied the chance to help people in Africa because she was black, and by the 1900s, she wound up in Daytona Beach. 1904, she founded a small school for black girls in Daytona that evolved into the Bethune-Cookman University. She constantly did what she could to help local black residents. Around 1905, she convinced city leaders to fund sidewalks and a uniformed and paid black police force for Daytona Beach's Midtown neighborhood. She helped create a hospital for black people in Midtown after one of her students was denied care at Halifax Hospital. She also partnered with a developer and investors to secure oceanfront land of New Smyrna's beach so Daytona's black residents could go to the beach without being harassed or ordered to leave. She got involved in the push to allow women to vote, and eventually her women's rights and civil rights activities took her to Washington, D.C. She was the only African-American woman to help the U.S. delegation that helped create the United Nations Charter. She also created the National Council of Negro Women, directed the Office of Minority Affairs in the National Youth Administration, and became a general in the Women's Army for the National Defense. So hopefully they've unveiled that statue now. Mary Macleod Bethune. Oh, they're going to delay it for a few months. Okay. Well, I'm sure that they'll get to it at some point. But the point is, and you know, more than just a statue, and this is the thing about statues, isn't it? We sometimes feel that when somebody appears in statue form, then that's really their only legacy, is the statue. And we forget that beyond the statue, in her case, the university, the schools, and then at the UN. Because, you know, these policies live on forever, don't they? And the United Nations Charter will live on forever. And the Council of Negro Women will live on forever. And the Director of Minority Affairs in the National Youth Administration will live on forever. And that's the point, isn't it? That we sometimes see a statue and we're like, well, you know, does it end there? And actually the legacy of these people who are great movers and shakers, who have the confidence to kind of break the cycle of their typical trajectory in life, these are the people that we should be electing as presidents. These are the people that we should be celebrating beyond just a statue. To be immortalized in stone is one thing, but to be immortalized in society is another. And another reason why Ron DeSantis should not run for president. It's very easy to undo things. Ron DeSantis is one of those great undoers, like Donald Trump, you know, whether it be the Environmental Protection Agency orders or anything. It's very easy to undo things. But to actually have the foresight to think of something new and to bring about change, to improve the lives of people, that is fundamentally one of those skills that makes you deserving of a stone tribute. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9. Your pal Hal is next. Have a great day.